On today's show, Darrell and I are talking about how the competitive advantage, mastery, and strategy of the strategic advantage baseball process all tie together. Hey guys, welcome back to the Strategic Baseball Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. And thank you guys for the ones who've been giving us some feedback. It's been very helpful for Darrell and I. On today's show, we want to talk about how the competitive advantage, mastery, and strategy of the strategic advantage baseball process all tie together. So Geoff and Darrell here, and we help baseball players get to the next level with a strategic advantage so that they can play with supreme confidence against the best players at any level. In every episode, we promise to deliver value on the strategic side of player development so you can help your players compete with players just as good, if not better than them. Remember, Darrell's a pitching strategist, I am a hitting strategist, and this is Strategic Baseball Podcast. If you are interested in joining our circle, head over to strategic-baseball.com, where you can find the show notes and submit your email to always get a reminder each time we release a new episode, weekly tip from Darrell and I, and a PDF transcription and visual of the previous episode, and much more. If you are a player, a parent, or a coach who is interested in learning more about how the strategic advantage baseball process works for you and your unique situation, please email me at jeff@athletic-mission.com or darrell@dc@startpitching.com. You can find those in the show notes, and we would love to arrange a time to talk with you and see how we can help. All right, Darrell, man. So I'm gonna let you kick this off. We're talking about how the competitive advantage, mastery, and strategic advantage of the strategic advantage baseball process all tie together.
Yeah, this is a conversation that we've got a lot of feedback back, and again, we knew it probably would. Once you start mentioning process, people are always wondering now, like, what is it? Is it just kind of this surface level buzzword that everybody says, and it's kind of this feel good type of thing? And if it's not working out, then you must not be trusting the process. And they literally have been asking, like, what is it? And we broke it down. We talk about competitive advantage, which is your measurables, the athleticism, your practice habits. For pitchers, it's your mechanics. It's the way you throw. It's the physical capability piece of pitching. And so today, I'm glad we wanted to have this conversation, because you and I are going to break down, like, literally how it ties together. And again, when we start focusing on physical capability, that is a prerequisite of wanting to be a baseball player. And I think sometimes as parents or coaches and as athletes, we get so focused, and I'm not sure it's a bad thing, but we get so focused on the one single thing that either we went and got an assessment and somebody said, hey, this is your biggest problem. And so when we start looking at how we are truly assessing players, and then the feedback we give them as coaches, and what we send them off to do, or kind of how we leave them, is kind of where the big question from parents and players is coming from. And so that is an integral part of the strategic advantage baseball process. When we start talking about how we take our physical capability and turn that into a mastered baseball skill set. Sometimes they coincide together. Sometimes they marry together. Sometimes it's uniquely different. Sometimes we're sending guys to strength and conditioning coaches and saying, hey, this is an inefficiency that for us to be able to truly move the way they need to move, for us to be able to create power off the rubber as a pitcher, then we got to fix this inefficiency. That don't mean we sacrifice working out the rest of the body, but we're going to do some super focused stuff just on this knee, or just on this leg, or just on our hips. And I think when we take that in context, it makes sense. But when we do it from a baseball evaluation kind of perspective, a lot of times I think parents kind of look at it like, oh, this is the cure. And I think there's too many coaches, or there's too many products out there now that are good products, but they're just so hyper focused on one issue that we kind of lose perspective of what it truly takes to be a complete player. And so that's kind of what, you and I wanted to kick around this on today's show, is kind of like, how do we take the strategic advantage baseball process, which for us is competitive advantages, your physical capability. The second piece is mastery. How do we practice till mastery? And how do we take the different, pitching skills and how do we really personalize that for each player we meet and design a practice plan that addresses that? And then how do we, once we have mastered pitches, once we have a mastered skill set, how do we turn that into a strategic advantage? How do we create a strategy? And I think sometimes, Geoff, you and I talk about this before, we go to physical capability and we skip mastery. We just practice a little bit, and then we don't really have a strategy. We just show up on game day, and then we expect that our physical capability is going to manifest itself into some kind of magical baseball skill set. And I think we skip the truly practicing until mastery and really, okay, now that we have 2 or 3 pretty good pitches that we trust for a pitcher's perspective, then what are we going to do against the opponent? And it just seems like we got this generic philosophy, like how we're going to go pitch to specific hitters. And I see it all the time, man. When I go to these youth games and I go to even high school games, and that usually about by the second inning, man, I can sit there and tell you 90% of the time what every pitcher is going to throw, because once I've seen them in most of the situations and counts that they're going to be in, or at least count wise, based on what pitches they really trust, then they come so predictable that any hitter that really is paying attention, and we talk about it at Athletic Mission all the time, and the guys last night we was talking about, they went to a tournament this last weekend, and it didn't take them 5 minutes to pick up everything that pitcher was doing. Now that you and I have kind of given them that feedback and what to specifically be looking for, and how it just changed the way they seen the game. And so now when you go to a game and you really know what you're capable of doing, and now it's about picking your opponent apart, it's about trying to pick that pitcher apart, or how do I pick a hitter apart, then, it changes your perspective. You're not so hyper-focused on your capability as much as you are that, okay, this is what I see my opponent, this is who I'm playing against today, and I can kind of see the cues and clues that they're giving me, the tips they're giving me, and what kind of true strategic advantage that gives you as a pitcher if you can see what their hitters consistently do, or a coaching philosophy that they're not going to be aggressive early in the game, or they're trying to run up pitch counts. All these little strategic advantage kind of concepts, when you look at it, then we don't have to drown in the data as much as we got to be focused on the reality of what we're seeing in real time. And I think once kids grasp that, and yeah, it's a tougher conversation at first, because it's not this, just generic baseball fundamentals conversation. But once they start seeing that connection, now all of a sudden we see the competitive advantage stuff, the strength and conditioning, the practice, all that stuff becomes more focused. And so they understand now how they take what their current athleticism is, and how do we work on our swing? How do we work on seeing that ball, as you'll talk about? Or how do we focus on our movement pattern, our mechanics as a pitcher? And once we realize and train the brain that this is how we need to move, and we do it from an athletic position, when we start feeling pressure, our default will become that most athletic, powerful athlete that we want to be, and we can really stay dialed in and focused on the baseball aspect of it. But I think so many times when I get phone calls from parents, or I get phone calls or from players or texts, and we kind of walk through the post-game evaluation, and we really start breaking down, and I'll ask them like, okay, man, on this hitter, and was it a 4-pitch walk, or was it a good at bat? Was it a 7 or 8 pitch walk? There's a difference between a 4-pitch walk and a 7 or 8 pitch walk, depending on the battle, depending on the game plan. Was the 4-pitch walk, was it close? Was you just missing? Or was it something that you wasn't even close to the zone? And then we do have to look at that in that context, because then it can tell us whether it was truly a mechanical thing, or was it a tight umpire that day, or was it something that, hey man, you were just missing with some good pitches and that guy was a disciplined hitter. So I think when we sit here and have this, well, that was a walk. No, we got to talk about what kind of walk it was. And I hear you talk about it to hitters all the time is, I struck out twice. Okay, then what kind of strikeout was it? Was it a good at bat, or did you just take 3 nasty pitches and that dude got an early count strikeout on you? Or did you really not see the ball at all and he took some ugly swings? And so I think, Geoff, when we start laying that out in context, man, then I think it does give coaches and players and parents an opportunity to see it from all 3 aspects, because just with the example of that one walk, we can see that, yeah, it might be a mechanical issue, or it might be that, hey man, that was just a good bat by that hitter. He's disciplined and he took some nasty pitches and the umpire didn't call him. Or it might be the fact that, hey man, the umpire missed a couple pitches and squeezed me early and yeah, it ended up in a 4-pitch walk. And so I think once we learned as players and coaches to look at it from that perspective, then we can see how just in that one walk example, how, yeah, it could have been a physical thing. It could have been a mastery thing. I kept trying to throw pitches that I don't have mastered yet. Or it could literally be a strategic thing like, hey, man, that was just a really good hitter. And I kind of pitched around him a little bit. I wasn't going to let him hurt me at this point in the game. So when we look at it in context from situations and counts, we look at it from the different aspects of what it takes to really be a good baseball player or a good pitcher, then when we break that down as coaches, as instructors, on into those different pieces throughout our strategic advantage baseball process. When we talk about the physical piece, the mastery piece, how do we practice until mastery? And then how does that translate into developing a strategy using our mastered skills to try to come up with some strategic advantage against an opponent? Then I think that clarity then becomes the process. Then we can start talking about the understanding piece, the mastery piece, the strategy piece, and then how we show up on game day, man. So I know that's a mouthful, but I know you and I are super passionate about making sure that we develop complete players, that they see that complete aspect or all 3 aspects that lead into game day and having game day success. And I think that's critical, man. So break it down for me. What are you thinking on that?
Yeah, for sure. And like we talked about before, and like you just said, the competitive advantage, that's the you part. And this is what you train and what you focus on to gain a competitive advantage, gain that physical capability. So yeah, get strong, take your strength and take an understanding of how you move, how you generate power, how you use the ground, how you stay through the baseball. And then from there, we got to take that and jump over to the mastery side.
Yep.
And so for the mastery side, we talk about swing matching, making sure that your swing matches the type of hitter that you are. But also we talk about the stick process. So the stick process, again, is seeing that baseball, the timing and the knowledge of the zone, which is going to affect your swing just like it would in a real game. So we have to practice that. We have to master that. And then once we kind of get good at that, now we have a strategic advantage that we can use in a game. And then as we master that, that's the swing part of it. We've got to jump over to the mastery of the hitting side of things. So this is what I call the command hitting. And this is the situational count awareness. Putting yourself in position, putting yourself in situations where you have to execute. And so now that you have the mastery of kind of your swing, and then you have some mastery of certain counts, certain situations, you're feeling really good about your ability to execute in certain situations. Now we can develop a strategy. We can't be thinking that just being strong and moving well is the key to game day performance. Your competitive advantage works until you face a guy just as good, if not better than you. So that mastery of that 0-2 count, driving the baseball the other way, that laying off dirty pitches. Again, the competitive advantage and the mastery of your skills is all about the you part. And then we need to do, and what you need to do to prepare and get better. But then we have to take that and we have to use it to compete against a pitcher, the pitcher that I'm facing, and having a strategy based off what I know about myself and what I know about him or what I see him do. So right there, man, it's a perspective change for a lot of guys. You know, when I met Darrell, 5-6 years ago, we started talking about the them part, the opponent.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're really good as an industry on the you part. A lot of people are doing awesome stuff, but man, on game day, there's a pitcher and there's the other team who collectively is trying to get you out and get you to suck. And so we gotta have a plan to beat them. And that's what we're talking about here, man, is how to tie all of this together. Get strong, move well, jump over to improve your stick process and your command hitting piece, and then developing a game plan to execute. And like you said, now during the post-game evaluation, the post-game conversation, we can talk about a number of things rather than just the mechanics all the time. It could be the mechanics, it could be the mastery, or it could be a strategy issue. So it's really cool with our guys at Athletic Mission, how deep the conversation go and how we hit on all of these other things and how it all ties together.
Yeah. You nailed it, because when it comes to player development, now we can talk about skill set, we can talk about mastery. At the end of the day, these players want to know how to show up on game day and take whatever they got that day and have some success, or at least compete with it. And I think we keep it so surface level about the conversation about what it takes to really be a good baseball player. And you and I have taken a different approach here in Tulsa. We've taken the approach that we want to break down what it really takes to be a great player on game day and then build the program back to it. So we start with strategy and we work our way back to mastery. Then we work our way back into the physical capability, the drills, the work, the stuff that we're doing day in and day out. And we try to drill in these guys' heads, literally and figuratively, that the drill is not what makes you great on game day. It's you taking that skill set that you're developing, the ability to see the ball, or your ability to command your pitches and be able to execute that under extreme pressure in a real game. It's not about the cage. It's not about intent all the time, because I've never met a guy that didn't want to be the best player they can be. It's really about the process. And when we talk about the process, it's not just some magical woo-woo word. It literally is. Do you have clarity and understanding about why you're doing that drill and how it's going to lead you into a mastered baseball skill set? And then does that give you a strategic advantage against the opponent you're going to be facing the next day, the next week, whenever? And then does it show up on game day literally? So this is not something that's just a theory. It's not just something that sounds good on a podcast or sounds good when you're speaking and talking to players. It's, can it physically and strategically be executed in a real baseball game? And again, that's the art of baseball. That's the truth of baseball. And I think that's it. This is the cool thing about having this conversation, man, because we finally get a chance to say, yeah, there's some great strength and conditioning guys out there. There's some great velocity guys. There's some great swing trainers. But at the end of the day, that's just a component of what it takes to really be to develop a mastered skill set, a baseball skill set. And when I talk about mastered, I'm not talking about this just targeted measurement. When I talk about mastered, I'm talking about what that individual player physically believes and trusts that they could do in a real baseball game. And that's different. It's not about, because baseball is not a perfect game. And it's played in a bunch of different environments. There's a bunch of different external environments that can impact how guys play, what happened that day. But to be able to really stay focused on the reality of how the game is played, I think there's so many people out there that are frustrated with that instead of embracing that. You know, we can't change the reality of baseball. And that's why I don't even I hate it when guys call it a game of failure. It's not a game of failure. It's just a game. That failure don't mean I did. That's right. And so when we see that and we love the challenge that comes with that, man, then it gives us the ability to stay focused on our process, because as we're developing baseball players, and as you just said, man, it's super hard game to play and be really, really good at it consistently, because you're playing in a different environment. You're seeing a different pitcher, or you're seeing different hitters every day, every game. And so with that becomes a whole new challenge of, okay, what is their skill set? What is their strategy against me? And then what should be my strategy against them? It does literally turn into this cool chess match if you embrace the game in totality. But if you just want to say, hey, man, I just want to throw hard, or I just want to have 104 mile an hour exit velocity, or I just want to pound home runs, then somebody is going to take advantage of that. Somebody's going to be the disciplined hitter that's going to let you throw 95. But if you can't throw 3 of them for a strike and one at bat, they're going to take the base. Because as much as we want to talk about all the sexy parts of baseball, there's nothing more sexier than winning baseball games. There's nothing. And so we can sit here and say how you won the game or what kind of philosophy that coach or that organization has. I don't care what anybody says. Every college coach and every pro coach that I've ever known, met, or played for wanted to win. And if that meant stealing home in the bottom of the ninth, then they stole home in the bottom of the ninth. If they got the win, they got the win. We can break it down afterwards what happened. But the reality of this stuff that we're just training guys just to be, looking for certain things or certain ways, man, I can tell you the hyper aggressive hitters that are just trying to hit home runs. Okay, man. Okay, I'll let them hit a home run every once in a while on me. But dude, as a pitcher, I'll take the 7 or 8 strikeouts that's coming with that. You know what I mean? That's just the reality of baseball. So, okay, every once in a while I give up a home run, but if I can get them out and strike them out 6 or 7 times, or, I can get weak contact or some ugly swing and misses, and it's giving me an idea of really what their weakness is. As long as I attack that weakness more often than not, dude, I'm going to get them out. So, again, I know some of it's just philosophy. Some of it is just like a training rhetoric. But at the end of the day, Geoff, what we're trying to do here, and the conversation that's been pretty cool, is how do we tie all of them together and really create the most aggressive, disciplined players we can.
Yeah, and you brought some stuff up, but a couple of things that I want to talk about. The one, it's some of the crazy practice habits that we see, and again, maybe it worked for some guys, but man, we have to look at game day as being our measurement of whether what we are doing is giving us a strategic advantage, and because every time I step in the cage, am I trying to hit the ball 3 miles an hour harder one time, or do I want to do that consistently? So anyways, I don't know. We got to look at the practice habit to make sure that what we're doing is giving us a strategic advantage that's going to work in a real baseball game. If it's not, then we kind of need to reevaluate what we're doing and what we're practicing, because now we're wasting time. The other thing that you brought up that I want to talk about is the environment and the situation that we're put into. And, whether there's like a big hole in the batter box or on the mound, how do we make the adjustments instead of getting half mad and blaming it, which we have a tendency to want to do? It's just natural instinct for us to get pissed because that's not what we were practicing for. That's not what we were expecting when we showed up. But how do we make the adjustments? Now we're thinking baseball, and now we're thinking about a real adjustment that we can make that can help us go out there and help our team win a baseball game, instead of checking out because of all the excuses that you could think of as to why your performance won't go the way that you had planned, be based on the situation and the environment that you were put into.
Yeah, and I think it's real. And it's, again, as we wrap this conversation up, that those are conversations that have to happen. Young players are going to deal with it, especially with all the tournaments they play in and all the different places they go and travel to now. You don't control the environment that you're going to play in. You don't control the field conditions. You don't control the timing hardly anymore. And so this ability to understand what it takes for you to truly get ready and the adaptability that you have to have. If we don't teach 12, 13, 14-year-olds that, we do. You and I talk about it all the time. Like, hey, when you show up at this place and they don't have here, then you really got to just get loose, feel good, think about what you want to do. And then once you get on the game mound, you got to find it in those 8 or 10 pitches. And if you can steal an extra warm-up pitch or two, then take it. You know, if the umpire turns his back or walks off and you can get a few more pitches in, then take it. But I think that's one of those, just, you know, again, it's one of those little things. We don't make excuses. We're going to show up and play. We're going to show up and play, man. And so that's the big takeaway I want guys to get from this conversation today. That, yeah, does it take physical skills? Absolutely. Does that make you the best baseball player? No. You know, does it make you somebody that's got the ability to develop some mastered baseball skills and then use that to your strategic advantage on game day? Hopefully. That's what we want. That's kind of the purpose of it. And sometimes guys can develop certain skill sets in a couple of weeks and a couple of months. And then sometimes it takes a lifetime to develop them. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 months to really just grasp the clarity on it. And now as you physically grow and develop, especially younger players that are kind of growing up and getting into their man bodies, at the same time, the mechanical piece might change, but the mastery piece and the strategy piece doesn't change.
Right.
And so we got to be able to introduce it. And hopefully that's what they take away from today's conversation, that, yeah, physical capability is important. Is it the easiest thing to measure? Yeah. Is it the current thing that we want to use as the kind of the default excuse every time something don't work out on game day? Unfortunately, that seems to be the trend today. But the reality of it is, man, it could have been numerous different things, and we can't just go radically change somebody's mechanics or change somebody's swing every time they don't have success in a game or on a weekend. You got to look at the totality of what happened. Maybe they just faced a really good pitcher that had a good strategy and just ate your lunch that day. There ain't nothing that needs to be changed outside of your approach and your strategy.
Right, absolutely. And then the takeaway for me is that we gotta understand that there is the you part, which is going to be that competitive advantage and that mastery, which most of us tend to understand. But we have to understand that there is an opponent. So there is the them part. There is an army of guys that want to ruin your day. So what we do every single day needs to give us a strategic advantage so that we can beat them who are trying to beat us.
Cool, man. Because I think that's what we're going to dive in this next show. We'll start talking about mastery and tying that together. What is a mastered skill set looks like? How do we practice that in season, off season, preseason, and kind of this yearly annual stuff that you and I always talk about that leads into the season or where they're at. So that'd be a cool conversation to bounce off of this one, man.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, this was, how the competitive advantage, mastery, and strategy of the strategic advantage baseball process all ties together. Again, so if you guys are finding any value in these episodes, please leave us an objective review and head over to strategic-baseball.com and join our circle. We got some stuff we're working on, and we're always going to share that with you. So we look forward to catching you guys in the next episode. Thank you all for listening.